everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, and on today's video I'm talking you through the 2023 releases that I read and what I thought of them. I have 13 books in total that I'm either going to mention or actually talk about, because there are two that are currently I'm reading and hoping to get done by the end of the year, so obviously they won't be in this video. But if I read them by the time I edit this and upload it, I will sneak them in. And there is one that I DNF'd. But yeah, this year I actually have completed 10 books that were published in this year. That is an improvement, because last year I think it was only something like 7 or 8. And I was really struggling with my yearly releases to keep up to date with everything. So I've not done too badly. I could have done better, but you know, we all have those moments. There is one book on this list that, even though it released this year, I read it last year, but I have included it because it was published this year, so I'm counting it. Also, one thing I have realised is that a lot of my December reads get overlooked, because obviously I start recording for Bookmas in November. And so there are certain videos where it's like I record them 5-6 weeks before the end of the year, and sometimes I read a lot in that period. So that's another reason why I've included one of these books, because I read it in December. But yeah, I am gonna rank these from like the lowest to the highest rate that I rated them. Well, not that I rate them, but how I feel about them now. Because one of them I think was my first or second book of the year, or it was like one of my first few books of the year. So obviously, you know, it's based more on how I feel about them now. And some of them, even though I rated them mid, they've come higher than others that I maybe rated higher and lower, and yeah, we're just going to get into the list. So the ones I'm currently still reading, I have The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten. I'm about a third of the way through that. I started it last week. I am loving it, and I feel like this one would have ended up really high on this list if I'd finished it before today. And then we also have The Malevolent Seven by Sebastian de Castell that I started listening to. I listened to the first 2 chapters and was loving it, and then just haven't gotten around to finishing. So that is again on my priority list to try and get done before the end of the year. And then my DNF was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. When I've gone, is it Laurie Gilmore? I can't remember. It'll be up here. But I remember when we got the email from One More Chapter promoting this book, they kind of made it that yes, it was romance, but it was set in a bit of a spooky, like, ooh, something's going on, there's going to be a mystery and there's going to be like a ghosty element to it. And from what I read, which was about I got 28% through it, and they still hadn't got past the we've just met and are now pining for each other stage. And I was just like, this isn't the book that they plugged it as. And now when I went back onto NetGalley to just say that I wasn't going to complete the book and why I DNF'd it, the blurb had changed, so it took out that mystery element. So I think what's happened is a lot of people have said the book isn't what you've marketed it as, and so they've readjusted it and are now just plugging it as a festive fall romance. But anyway, moving on with the continuing of the negative reviews. In last and 10th place, we have one that's going to hurt a few people, and one that I know at least one person on this platform is in agreement with me and is probably going, yes, in agreement with me, and that is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. And I know I'm not alone with this one, because Charlotte from Clumsy Charlotte has had the exact same feelings that I've had, which is that, yes, Klune has got a fantastic way of writing. Unfortunately, in this book, it disappeared. The plot was boring. It was just kind of like, we're going here and now we're going there, and again everything seemed to be centered around sex and sexuality in this book, which again, if you've got an asexual main character, why is the plot about sex so much and about that kind of thing? And then the big thing in the book and the big reveal in the book ended up being really downplayed because of everything else, and it was just like, it wasn't good. I rated it 3 stars at the time. Upon reflection now, I can't believe I gave it any more than a 2. I will be ranting even more about this because it's inevitable. It's going to come up in my worst book of the year video. So I'll talk a lot more about it in there. But yeah, this book just didn't hit the mark. It really made me uncomfortable, and I felt that the sexual representation in here was almost being mocked, and I just did not appreciate that. In ninth place, we have one of the books that I reviewed very early on in the year for NetGalley, and that was Wa, The Art of Balance. This was a non-fiction all about using how the Japanese live and using sort of like the 5 different constructs within Japanese society and how you can improve your life by following these things. And unfortunately, it just read like a huge, great big PhD thesis. It really didn't give me much, and it just kind of felt like A, I'm not learning anything new here, and B, the things I am learning feel like I'm sat in a lecture that I've been in for the past 10 hours. It really wasn't very well written, and I did appreciate that it included little recipes and photos for things, and it gave you ideas for things that you could do, but it took a lot of effort and a lot of work to get to those points. And I think by the time we got to the second pillar, which is what they called them, I was like, how many more times are you going to repeat the same fact over and over and over again? I just didn't have a great time. I gave it 2.5 or 3 stars. Can't quite remember which, what have I got here? I gave it 3 stars. So it was generous, but yeah, it wasn't for me, and it didn't do what I was hoping it would do, and it kind of put me off reading non-fiction for the rest of the year. In 8th place, we have another arc. I really feel bad because so many of my arcs this year just weren't it for me. But we have another arc, which is Straight Expectations by Callum McSwain or Swigan, something. It will be up here. There was nothing really wrong with this book. If I'd read it a few years ago, I probably would have really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, after having taught teenagers and been around teenagers a lot for a few years, I am so done with teenage drama and angst, and I just don't really enjoy reading about teenagers going through those kind of first love, romantic attractions. Also, I kind of didn't like the main point of this. I almost felt, what was the point in the character going through the thing that he went through when he didn't really change as a character? And I don't feel he went through a very good journey. Everything sort of resolved perfectly in the end, and it just felt a bit too easy, and it felt like the resolution came a bit too readily, and I don't know, something was really off about it for me. I did give it 3 stars, but yeah, it just was not the most fun that I'd had, and yeah, so that's why it's so in 8th place. In 7th place, we have Slick by Juniper Jordan. This was a very, very quick, something like 20 something pages of basically a pirate taking over a guy's ship and then having sex with him. That was it. That is the plot. There was no character introduction, really. We had no backstory. We had no anything. It was just, show me your plunder, bend over. Yeah, that's all I can say about it. It was good for what it was. The smut was well written, but it was also just there was no plot or anything like that. So again, 3 stars and kind of mid to low level on this list. In 6th place, I did have a copy, but I've sent it on to Ren. We have Project Naught by Chelsea Furidi. This is a debut graphic novel that she's written, and it was basically people from the 1990s were transported into the future to become part of this project, teaching people in the future about life in the 90s and sort of trying to improve on their current situation and lives. And it was good. I did enjoy it. I do want to get a final copy of it at some point, because the arc was only some of it was in colour, the rest was in sketch form. And I did have fun, and the characters were great, the representation in it was great. There was just a couple of bits with the plot where things weren't really explained, or it was a little bit confusing, and the pacing was a little bit hit and miss. But the idea behind it was great, and there's always a bit of, I'm not always a big fan of time travel stuff, and I did find that some of the time travel elements were a bit clunky. But overall, it was a great book, and I did have fun, and I kind of hope that there is going to be a sequel at some point. Coming into the top 5, in 5th place, we have Beth O'Leary with The No-Show. I really loved the 3 different characters. I didn't make the connections between them, and I didn't kind of register what the book was doing until it happened, and I was like, oh! That's what's going on. And I know some people have said that it was really predictable and they kind of knew immediately where it was going to end up, but I genuinely didn't. So that kind of led into the amazement for me, because I didn't see it coming, and I was really excited when it did happen. I was like, oh, it was a great read. I had a really good time. I read it in not even a day. I just sat and inhaled it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. It's just that there are other books coming up that I enjoyed way more, And the only thing with that one is I don't really remember it. It didn't stick in my mind. I don't find myself thinking about it very much. It was just one of those, as I was reading it, I was having a brilliant time. I rated it really high because it was a really good book, but I kind of have just instantly moved on, and it's not really had any kind of significant impact on me. And I don't really think about it when I'm thinking about, when I sort of say to people, oh yeah, read these books, it's not one that comes to mind. But it was really great, and I did like reignite my love for Beth O'Leary's writing, and I'm hoping now that the road trip was just a one-off bad book. Fourth place, we have quite a surprising one, because I recently did my first foray into monster smut, and one of the books that I read was Stealing the Troll's Heart. The smut itself was pretty bland, boring, and I was kind of like, I don't see the hype. But the story was great. I actually ended up really enjoying the characters. The setting was great. What happened was great. And I ended up really wishing that the story had been longer than 100 and something pages. I felt this could have been a full-length novel and I would have had an amazing time. Because like with the war going on between the humans and the trolls, I wanted to know more, like what was causing that, why was that happening? The stuff with their relationship, I really wanted to spend more time with them building it. Then there was like other things that happened towards the end of the book, and that was like very quickly glanced over. And I felt it could have easily been a full page novel and I would have read it. I gave it 4 stars. I had a great time. Maybe it's stuck in my head a bit more because it's only been a few days. But yeah, I rated it really highly and I thoroughly enjoyed it and will continue the series. Thankfully, the rest of these, I have the physical copies of all of them. In third place, we have a book that took me by surprise, and that was Wayward by Amelia Hart. This follows 3 women. It's an intergenerational story, not something I usually read. It's magical surrealism, again, something I don't normally read or enjoy, and it did get a little bit towards the end. I was like, this is getting a bit too vague and like out of sync now, but then it brought it back and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. And I just thought all of the stories from the family generations were really powerful, really strong. If you're someone who reads this kind of book and reads a lot of literary fiction and things like that and generational stories, you might not have had the same enjoyment that I did. But as someone who doesn't read it, the writing was really well done. It was really accessible, really easy to read and follow along with. It has some really powerful, potent quotes in here. It had that kind of element of magical suspense, and that like where the women each have an affinity for animals, birds in particular, and insects and things, and the way that each of them had that affinity and the way it was woven in was just beautiful. The prose was gorgeous. I thought it was a really powerful story. It is one that I do want to reread at some point. And yeah, the spine says it all. Gripping, exhilarating, empowering, magnificent, fierce, intricate. Sums up this book beautifully. I couldn't say any better myself. In second place, we have the one that I was saying was the one that I read last year, and I got it as an ARC from Yauk, and that is The Agency for Scandal by Laura Wood. This is a YA set in the Victorian era and follows an agency of women who because women were very underrepresented in society and didn't get a lot of help, they decided to set up their own agency where they help. And they basically help to uncover the secrets of the husbands in order to cause like the scandal to allow the woman to then divorce, or they just help women who are in difficult situations to get out of them. Isabel is basically one of the agents working for this agency, and she goes undercover to try and find these secrets, but then she runs in with the Viscount, I think his name is, Max Vane, and he ends up embroiled in the current scheme and helps them out, and then them two fall in love. And I just had such a good time with this. Everything was really well written, everything was great. I kind of, as I'm holding it, I really kind of want to just pick it up and start reading it right now and have another go with it. I gave it 5 stars. I stand by that 5 stars. And yeah, it was just, if you like sort of Enola Holmes, if you like those sort of Victorian mystery books set with a little bit of chaos, you will absolutely love this book. It's also kind of got that element of Bridgerton in there, where it's got all about the balls. It's a different time period, but it's got sort of like the balls and the high society mixed in with a little bit of Enola Holmes with the murder mystery and the trying to solve an investigation. And it was just so much fun. In first place, we have To Probably Nobody's Surprise, and I am so grateful to the publishers for sending me a copy of this so I could review it. We have Resonance Surge by Nalini Singh. This is book 7 in the Psy Changeling Trinity series, And as we all know, Psy Changeling series is my all-time favourite series, and you can tell I had a good time with this book. We follow two characters who, one, we've not really had any mention of in the series, who was Theo, but her family we know a lot about. We've had a lot of stuff going on. And then we go back to the Stonewater Bears, who are my favourite of all of the changelings. The bears have my heart and soul. I love all of them, but just the bears, there is something about them. I adore their dynamics and their family situation, and I wish I was a bear. And we go back to Yakov in particular, and you got Yakov and Pavel, who are twins, and Yakov is basically put in charge of protecting and monitoring Theo Marshall when she comes to she's coming to investigate something. I'm trying to not give any spoilers away, and these two get thrown together, and obviously there's a romance, but the development of the plot in this book went to levels I wasn't expecting. I cried with this book, and the one thing with Nalini's books, and it's not really spoilery because I've seen a few people talking about this, is you know that no matter how bad it gets, she doesn't normally pull that final punch. As of yet, there's been no major character deaths in her series. But this one was the closest any of them came to me thinking maybe this time she has done it, and with a certain thing that happened, and I was in tears. But then it also had Pavel, who for a few books now we've kind of been hearing hints and bits about him with another character, Arwen, and we get some really beautiful moments with them and just the whole thing. And the thing that I love also about Nalini Singh's books is she will introduce a character who will just grip me. Even if that character is only in it for a page or a sentence, that character will just grab me and I'm like, I need to know more. And in this, it was Bogdan, who is the very grumpy baker that's part of the den. I think he was only in it for one scene, but the interactions he had with Yakov, I'm like, I desperately want more from that character. And I really hope, because we've had it in the past where there's been a character that's been kind of vaguely mentioned in one or two scenes, and then suddenly there's a book where they're the main character. Or she does, in her newsletter, she'll do little outtakes and extra stories, and I really, 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 really want Bogdan to end up coming back into it, because I just loved how he was so grumpy, and just the way he was, he was so grumpy but still pushing food to make sure that everybody was eating fine. And I'm like, now that is my kind of bear. And yeah, I just had such a good time with this, and it just, like I said, it went in directions I didn't expect, and I was mind blown, and I cannot wait for the next book, especially as the next book goes back to another character that I absolutely have loved since he arrived, and it's been quite a while since we last heard from, so I'm really, really looking forward to it. Those are all of the books that I read that were released this year, and yeah, let me know in the comments, are there any books that you've read that were published this year that you absolutely loved and didn't expect to, or were there any that, with me with puppets, where I expected to love and ended up really not liking? Let me know what happened with your 2023 releases in the comments, and I will speak to you tomorrow when the next video releases. I hope you're all good, I hope you're staying safe, and until next time, bye.